to welcome all of you to this very special session, which consists of a launching of a book by our main speaker and later on a panel discussion. But before that, it is also my pleasant duty to introduce first the main speaker, followed by, immediately after that, I will introduce our guest of honor. I'm sure many of you have already known or have met or at least heard of Professor Abdullahi An-Naim. And I cannot read even my own handwriting now. And he is a professor of law at Emory University. And I think he's been with Emory University from the late 1990s. He left his motherland, Sudan, in 1985 under very, very dramatic, I would say, significant political circumstances, which I shall not describe now, but you can have a conversation with him later on. I was very enthralled when I first heard about how he left Sudan. But more importantly and more relevant to us today, we must take note of the fact that Prof. An-Naim is an author of several books. But for us in Malaysia, at least for me, we are very familiar with two of these books, one of which is going to be launched today. The Malay version of one of those is going to be launched today. This is a book he wrote in 1990 on Islamic reformation, and that book has been translated into several languages. So it is just as well that today we are going to launch, and I must congratulate IRF for having successfully translated that book into Malay. That's a very, very good deed that you have done. And on Islamic reformation and looking at civil liberties, international law, and human rights. And it is just as well that the panel that follows after the launching of that book is, as you can see, a very, very catchy and provocative, makes you think, that title is Reforming Islam, Deforming Islam. We try to reform Islam, and lo and behold, what do we get? We may get a very deformed form of Islam, which would be very tragic. The second book is even more familiar with many of us, at least to me, and that book Prof wrote as recent as 2008, is called Islam and the Secular State. And I must say here, I have not had any other source to learn about the secular state or secularism, although I have now learned from him, let's not use the word secularism. I have learned most about the secular state from the books and the writings and the lectures of Prof. Abdullahi An-Naim. I think that is one of the most lucid descriptions of Islam and the secular state. Now, some of us were privileged in the year 2016. That was the first time I met Prof. An-Naim. He was here for 3 days, and I must tell you, in each of those 3 days, I cannot tell you enough how much I learned from this very learned man. And more importantly, in each of those 3 days, I came away with very significant, what I call take-home messages. And some of the take-home messages just get embedded in my mind. One of which I think we have repeated this so many times. I was so enchanted when he said this: I can only be a true believer, I can only be a true Muslim if I'm allowed to unbelieve or to disbelieve. Therefore, I must live in a secular state. If I live in an Islamic state, my being a Muslim has no meaning, because then I'm not a Muslim by choice. And that was my biggest take-home message. And there were many other take-home messages for each of those 3 days. Good evening, Nofarida. I'm glad you made it on time, almost. Okay. And yesterday we had a very nice discussion with Prof. Naim, and again after the discussion with him yesterday, I have some very significant take-home messages as well. With that, ladies and gentlemen, it is also my pleasant duty today to introduce our guest of honor, Yang Berhormat Syahri Sunggip, Honorable Assemblyman. He's a State Assemblyman for Hulu Klang in the state of Selangor, qualified as an engineer, has an MBA, and did postgraduate diploma in Islamic studies. He's not here today for his political or his engineering background. That's far from it. That as it may, I must mention here, Yang Berhormat, that I, a resident of Taman Melawati and a voter, I not only voted for you, I campaigned for you. I must make it known here that Yang Berhormat Syahri is one of the wonderful wakil rakyat you can have. We in our area, we just love this man. And he's so approachable, he's so humble, he's always ready. And I must make mention here, my husband especially, he's the chartered president of the Rotary Club in Taman Melawati. He has nothing but praises for Yang Berhormat because he's always there, you know, to help them in any way that they need help in. So, but today he is here as our guest of honor, rightly so, very appropriate. I would like to tell you what Faruq whispered to me when I asked Faruq, why is your guest of honor my Wakil Rakyat? Faruq said, he may be your Wakil Rakyat, but he was my mentor in the student days. So in UK, Yang Berhormat Syahri played a very, very important role in the IRC, which is the Islamic Representative Council in the UK. It has a long history of activism. I mean, he really has a long history of student activism. And it was very, very gratifying to me to know that because he has postgraduate diploma in Islamic studies, that he has a special interest and special commitment to Islamic reforms, that is not deforming reforms, and also to Islam and the secular state, which exactly are the two themes that we are very familiar with as regards Prof. Naim's writings. So that is the introduction to the main speaker and to the guest of honor. And now it gives me great pleasure, Yang Berhormat, to invite you to give a little speech maybe to launch the book by Professor Naim on Islamic Reformation, the Malay version.